I never thought a simple misunderstanding at a bachelorette party would destroy my marriage. But here I am, 34 years old and facing divorce papers because my husband believes I cheated on him. This whole nightmare started 3 weeks ago when I attended my best friend Sarah's bachelorette party in Las Vegas. My husband Mark and I had been married for 6 years, and while we'd had our ups and downs like any couple, I never imagined something like this could tear us apart so completely. The party was supposed to be a fun weekend getaway. Sarah had invited 8 of her closest friends, and we'd planned everything from spa treatments to fancy dinners and yes, some clubbing. I was actually hesitant to go initially because Mark had been working overtime at his financial consulting firm, trying to secure a promotion that would significantly boost our household income. We'd been discussing buying a larger house and maybe starting a family, so every dollar mattered. But Sarah insisted, and Mark encouraged me to go, saying I deserved a break from my demanding job at the marketing agency. The first night went perfectly. We had dinner at an upscale restaurant, went to a show, and returned to our hotel suite around midnight. But the second night is where everything went wrong. We decided to hit one of the popular nightclubs on the Strip. I wore a black dress that Mark had actually picked out for me months earlier, telling me how stunning I looked in it. The irony isn't lost on me now. At the club, we got a VIP table and were having a great time dancing and celebrating Sarah's upcoming wedding. Around 11 p.m., this guy approached our table. He was tall, well-dressed, and introduced himself as David. He said he was a real estate investor from California, in town for a business conference. He seemed friendly and normal, so when he asked if he could buy our table a round of drinks, Sarah said yes. David was charming and funny, and he ended up hanging around our group for about an hour. He talked about his work in property investment and mentioned he was looking to expand into commercial real estate. At one point, he asked me about my wedding ring, and I proudly told him about Mark and our marriage. He seemed genuinely interested and respectful, even mentioning he hoped to find someone special himself someday. Here's where the innocent mistake happened that would later destroy my life. One of Sarah's friends, Jessica, had brought a professional camera to document the night. She was taking photos of everyone, and at one point, she asked David to take a group photo of all Yes girls. While he was taking pictures, Jessica suggested we take some individual shots too. When it was my turn, David made some joke about me looking like a movie star, and I laughed and posed playfully for a few shots. Then Jessica, who had been drinking heavily, got this idea that we should take a photo of David and me together, claiming we looked like we could be in a magazine ad. I was tipsy too, and thought it was harmless fun, so I agreed. We took maybe 3 or 4 photos together, with me laughing at something he said. In one photo, his arm was around my shoulders in a friendly pose. In another, we were both laughing and standing close together, but nothing inappropriate happened. It was just silly party photos, the kind you take and forget about. David left our table around midnight, giving everyone friendly hugs goodbye and wishing Sarah well on her upcoming marriage. He even shook my hand and said it was nice meeting me. I thought that was the end of it, and honestly, I barely thought about him again for the rest of the weekend. The real trouble started when we got back home to Phoenix. Jessica, who had posted constantly throughout the trip, had uploaded hundreds of photos to her social media accounts. Unfortunately, she tagged all of us in everything, including those photos of David and me. I didn't even notice them initially because I'm not very active on social media and rarely check my notifications. Mark found the photos 2 days after I returned. He came home from his consulting job that evening with a strange expression on his face. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming and telling him about how refreshing the weekend had been. That's when he showed me his phone with one of the photos displayed. The photo he showed me was one where David and I were standing close together, both laughing. From the angle and lighting, I admit it looked more intimate than it actually was. Mark's voice was cold when he asked, "Who is this man, and why are you all over him?" I was completely caught off guard and tried to explain that David was just someone we met at the club, that it was innocent party photos, nothing more, but Mark wasn't buying it. He scrolled through his phone and showed me the other photos Jessica had posted. When he saw the one where David's arm was around my shoulders, his face went white. "This looks pretty cozy for someone you just met," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "And you're wearing the dress I bought you, the one you said was special for us." I tried desperately to explain the innocent context, but Mark had already constructed his own narrative in his mind. He accused me of going to Vegas specifically to cheat on him, of using Sarah's bachelorette party as a cover for an affair. When I pointed out that I was with 7 other women the entire time, he claimed I could have snuck away or that the group was covering for me. The argument escalated quickly. Mark brought up our recent discussions about buying a house and starting a family, saying he now understood why I'd been hesitant about both. He accused me of having second thoughts about our marriage and looking for a way out. Nothing I said seemed to matter. He was convinced that the photos showed evidence of infidelity, and my explanations sounded like lies to him. That night, Mark slept in the guest room. Over the next few days, he became increasingly distant and suspicious. He started questioning everything about the trip, demanding details about every moment, every conversation. He even called Sarah to interrogate her about the weekend, which mortified me. Sarah tried to vouch for my innocence, explaining exactly what had happened, but Mark dismissed her account as a friend covering for me. The situation got worse when Mark hired a private investigator to look into David. Yes, he actually spent money we didn't have to investigate a complete stranger I'd taken a few innocent photos with. The investigator found David's business information and confirmed he was indeed a real estate investor who had been in Vegas for a conference that weekend. But instead of reassuring Mark, this somehow convinced him that I'd planned to meet David all along. Mark's paranoia reached new heights. He started going through my phone, my emails, my social media accounts. He questioned why I had cash receipts from the trip instead of using our joint credit card for everything. I explained that we'd been splitting group expenses in cash to make things easier, but he saw this as evidence I was hiding something. 2 weeks after returning from Vegas, Mark asked me to move out. He said he needed space to think about our marriage and whether he could trust me again. I was devastated. I begged him to consider couples counseling, to give me a chance to prove my innocence. But his mind was made up. He'd already spoken to a divorce attorney and was preparing to file papers. I moved in with my sister temporarily, hoping Mark would come to his senses. But instead, he accelerated the divorce process. His lawyer sent me paperwork citing irreconcilable differences and adultery. Seeing those legal documents with my name on them was one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life. My own attorney, a family law specialist who charged $300 per hour, reviewed Mark's claims and assured me that he had no real evidence of adultery. Photos of me standing next to someone at a public event weren't grounds for anything legally, but emotionally, the damage was already done. Mark had convinced himself of a narrative that simply wasn't true, and nothing I said or did seemed capable of changing his mind. The worst part was watching our mutual friends and family react to the news. Mark had told his version of events to anyone who would listen, painting me as an unfaithful wife who had betrayed our marriage vows in Vegas. Some people believed him immediately, while others were skeptical but unsure what to think. I found myself having to defend my character and integrity to people I'd known for years. Update 1. 3 weeks have passed since Mark asked me to leave, and the situation has somehow gotten even more complicated. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but I was wrong. Yesterday, I received a call that changed everything, though not in the way I hoped. David, the man from the Vegas photos, had somehow gotten my phone number and called me. Apparently, he'd been contacted by Mark's private investigator and was confused about why his brief interaction with our group was being investigated. He wanted to reach out and apologize for any trouble his presence in those photos had caused. During our 20-minute phone conversation, David explained that he'd been dealing with his own relationship issues recently. He'd broken up with his longtime girlfriend just a month before the Vegas trip, which was why he was traveling alone for the business conference. He said he remembered our group as being fun and friendly, and he was shocked to learn that innocent party photos had led to someone's marriage falling apart. David offered to speak directly with Mark to clarify what had happened that night. He even offered to provide a written statement explaining that nothing inappropriate had occurred between us, that our interaction was brief and completely platonic. I was grateful for his willingness to help, but I was also terrified about how Mark might react to learning that David had contacted me. I decided to be completely transparent with Mark about the phone call. I texted him immediately after hanging up with David, explaining that David had reached out, what he'd said, and his offer to provide clarification. I thought this might finally be the breakthrough we needed, proof from an independent source that nothing had happened. Mark's response was explosive. He called me within minutes, screaming that this proved his suspicions were correct. In his mind, the fact that David had tracked down my phone number was evidence that we'd exchanged contact information in Vegas and had been in communication all along. No matter how I explained that David had gotten my number through professional networks after being contacted by the investigator, Mark refused to believe it. The phone call with Mark was devastating. He accused me of orchestrating the entire thing, of coaching David on what to say to cover our tracks. He said David's offer to provide a statement was obviously rehearsed, and that real strangers don't go to such lengths to clear someone's name unless they have something to hide. Mark has now instructed his divorce attorney to expedite the proceedings. He's also told me through his lawyer that he considers David's phone call to be harassment, and that any further contact from either of us could result in legal action. I'm terrified that my attempt to be transparent has only made things worse. Meanwhile, I'm struggling financially living with my sister. I've had to hire my own divorce attorney, which is draining my savings account at an alarming rate. My lawyer now estimates that if Mark continues to contest everything and push the adultery angle, my legal fees could reach $15,000 or more. Money I was planning to use for a down payment on our dream house is instead going to lawyers who are essentially refereeing the destruction of my marriage. The emotional toll has been devastating too. I've barely been eating or sleeping, and my performance at work has suffered significantly. My supervisor at the marketing agency pulled me aside yesterday to express concern about my recent work quality and to ask if everything was okay at home. I broke down in her office and had to explain the entire situation. She was understanding and offered to arrange some time off if I needed it, but I can't afford to take unpaid leave right now. Sarah has been an incredible friend through all of this, but I can see the strain it's putting on her too. She's supposed to be planning her wedding, which is now just 6 weeks away, but instead she's spending hours on the phone with me and dealing with Mark's accusations. She even offered to postpone her wedding if I needed more support, which made me cry because I couldn't believe my drama was affecting her special day. Last weekend, Sarah arranged for Jessica to meet with me and go through all the photos from Vegas. Jessica felt terrible about posting the pictures without considering how they might be misinterpreted. She showed me dozens of photos from that night, including many that clearly showed David interacting with other women in our group in exactly the same friendly way he'd interacted with me. Jessica also revealed something that might be important. She remembered David mentioning during our conversation that night that he'd recently gone through a difficult breakup and was focusing on his career in real estate investment. This supported his story about being alone at the conference and explained why he'd been so sociable with our group. But when I shared this information with my lawyer, she warned me that it might actually work against me, since Mark could argue it meant David was looking for a rebound relationship. The most heartbreaking part of all this is that I still love Mark deeply, despite everything he's put me through. We built a life together over 6 years. We talked about growing old together, about the kids we wanted to have, about the house we'd buy with the promotion money from his consulting firm. Now, all of that is gone because of a misunderstanding that spiraled completely out of control. I've been seeing a therapist to help me process everything that's happened. She's helped me understand that Mark's reaction, while devastating, might stem from deeper insecurities or trust issues that existed in our marriage before the Vegas trip. She suggested that even if we somehow reconcile, we'd need extensive couples counseling to rebuild the foundation of trust that's been destroyed. But reconciliation seems increasingly unlikely. Mark has blocked my phone number and communicates only through lawyers now. He's also blocked me on all social media platforms and has asked our mutual friends not to share information about me with him. It's as if he's trying to erase me from his life completely, which is probably the most painful part of this entire experience. Update 2. 2 months have passed since this nightmare began, and I'm writing this update from my new apartment. Yes, I've finally found my own place, a small 1-bedroom about 20 minutes from my office. It's not the house Mark and I had dreamed of buying together, but it's mine, and there's something liberating about having my own space again after living with my sister for so long. The divorce proceedings have been brutal and expensive, just as my attorney warned. Mark has refused every attempt at mediation, insisting on taking everything to court. His lawyer has subpoenaed Jessica's social media accounts, demanding all photos and videos from the Vegas trip. They've also requested phone records from both my phone and David's to prove we were in contact before and after Vegas, despite the fact that no such contact existed. My legal fees have now exceeded $20,000, money I never imagined I'd have to spend defending myself against false accusations. I've had to liquidate my retirement savings account and take out a personal loan just to keep up with the costs. My attorney estimates we're still months away from resolution, and the bills keep mounting. It's ironic that Mark, who works as a financial consultant helping people manage their money wisely, has put us both in such a financially precarious situation. But here's the bombshell that nobody saw coming. 3 weeks ago, I received a call from a woman named Rachel. She introduced herself as David's ex-girlfriend, the one he'd mentioned breaking up with before the Vegas conference. Apparently, David had told her about the situation with my marriage and the investigation, and she felt compelled to reach out. Rachel's story was eye-opening. She and David had been together for 2 years before their breakup, and she confirmed that he'd been devastated by their relationship ending. She said he'd thrown himself into work and had been traveling constantly for real estate deals, trying to distract himself from the pain. The Vegas conference was actually his first social outing since their breakup, which explained why he'd been so friendly and talkative with our group that night. More importantly, Rachel offered to provide a statement to my legal team confirming David's emotional state during that time period and his character. She described him as honest and respectful in relationships, someone who would never pursue a married woman. Her willingness to get involved in a stranger's legal battle, despite her own complicated history with David, showed incredible integrity. My attorney was initially excited about this potential testimony, but then we hit another snag. Mark's lawyer argued that Rachel was a biased witness with her own agenda, possibly trying to reconcile with David by helping to clear his name. They also suggested that Rachel and I had coordinated our stories, despite the fact that we'd never met or spoken before her phone call. The paranoia from Mark's side has reached absurd levels. His legal team has now expanded their investigation to include Rachel's background, looking for any connection between us that might suggest conspiracy. They've requested her employment records, travel history, and social media accounts. The fact that we have no connection whatsoever doesn't seem to matter to them. Meanwhile, I've been trying to rebuild my life and career. The stress of the divorce proceedings was affecting my work performance so severely that I made the difficult decision to look for a new job. I couldn't bear the pitying looks from colleagues who knew about my situation, and I needed a fresh start somewhere. That divorce drama wasn't the main topic of office gossip. I found a position with a smaller marketing firm that specializes in real estate advertising, which felt like a sign. The job pays slightly less than my previous position, but the work environment is more supportive, and my new boss has been understanding about the flexible schedule I need for legal appointments. Ironically, working in real estate marketing has given me insights into property investment that make me understand David's business better. Though that knowledge feels useless now, the emotional healing has been slower than the practical rebuilding. I still wake up some mornings forgetting that Mark and I are no longer together, reaching for my phone to text him something funny or interesting before reality crashes back. I've been attending a support group for people going through difficult divorces, and hearing other people's stories has helped me realize that I'm not alone in experiencing seemingly impossible relationship destruction. One woman in my support group went through something similar when her husband found an old photo of her with a male colleague and became convinced they were having an affair. Another man shared how his wife divorced him after misinterpreting a friendly conversation she witnessed between him and a neighbor. These stories are heartbreaking but also validating, confirming that relationships can indeed be destroyed by misunderstandings and unfounded suspicions. Sarah's wedding is next weekend, and I'm still planning to attend as her maid of honor. She offered to replace me if being in a wedding would be too painful given my divorce situation, but I refuse to let my drama affect her special day any more than it already has. I've bought a beautiful dress and am determined to celebrate my best friend properly, even though it means I'll probably spend the reception explaining my situation to mutual friends who haven't seen me since the marriage fell apart. Mark won't be attending the wedding, even though he was originally invited as my +1 and had developed friendships with some of Sarah's other friends over the years. Sarah told me he declined the invitation without explanation, which was probably for the best. I can't imagine how awkward and painful it would have been to see him there, especially surrounded by happy couples celebrating love and commitment. The most surprising development has been my relationship with my family. My parents, who initially tried to stay neutral and encourage reconciliation, have become increasingly supportive as they've witnessed the legal harassment and financial destruction Mark has put me through. My father, who always liked Mark and respected his work in financial consulting, recently told me that Mark's behavior throughout this divorce has shown a side of his character that makes him question whether Mark was ever worthy of me. My sister has been an absolute rock throughout this entire ordeal. She's not only provided me with housing when I needed it most, but she's also attended several legal meetings with me for moral support and helped me research attorneys when I needed to upgrade my legal representation. Having family support has made all the difference in maintaining my sanity through this process. Update 3. 4 months after the Vegas photos destroyed my marriage, I'm finally seeing light at the end of this very dark tunnel. The divorce has been finalized, and while the outcome wasn't everything I hoped for, I can finally start moving forward with my life without the constant stress of legal battles hanging over me. The final court hearing was last week, and it was simultaneously vindicating and heartbreaking. My attorney had assembled an impressive case demonstrating that Mark's adultery allegations were completely unfounded. We presented testimony from Sarah and the other women who were with me in Vegas, phone records proving I had no contact with David before or after that night, except for his single call offering to help, and even Rachel's statement about David's character and emotional state during that time. The judge was clearly unimpressed with Mark's evidence. During his lawyer's presentation, she interrupted several times to ask for clarification about how party photos with a stranger constituted proof of adultery. When Mark's attorney tried to argue that my secretive behavior and lies about the trip were evidence of guilt, the judge pointedly asked what specific lies they were referring to, since all my statements had been corroborated by multiple witnesses. The most devastating moment for Mark's case came when the judge asked him directly whether he had any evidence of actual infidelity beyond the photos. Mark stood up and gave an emotional speech about trust and betrayal, but when pressed for concrete evidence, he had nothing to offer. The judge's expression made it clear she viewed his accusations as unfounded jealousy rather than legitimate legal claims. In the end, the court ruled that there was no evidence of adultery, and the divorce was granted on grounds of irreconcilable differences. The financial settlement was fairly equitable, though the legal fees had already cost us both dearly. Mark was ordered to pay half of my attorney costs, which amounted to nearly $12,000, money that should have gone toward our dream house down payment. We split our assets according to state guidelines, with each of us keeping our individual retirement accounts and dividing our joint savings. The house we'd been renting was easy to handle since neither of us wanted to stay there after everything that had happened. I was relieved not to have to fight over property or deal with a lengthy asset division process. The most bittersweet part of the settlement was dividing our wedding gifts and shared possessions. 6 years of marriage had created a lot of intertwined belongings, from kitchen appliances we'd received as wedding presents to furniture we'd bought together for the home we thought we'd share forever. Mark's attorney handled most of these negotiations, since Mark still refused to communicate with me directly. After the hearing, Mark walked past me in the courthouse hallway without making eye contact. That was the last time I've seen him. And honestly, I'm not sure I'd recognize the man I married in the bitter, suspicious person he became during these proceedings. The Mark I fell in love with was trusting, kind, and rational. The Mark who destroyed our marriage was none of those things. Sarah's wedding was absolutely beautiful and provided a much-needed celebration in the midst of all this legal drama. I managed to fulfill my maid of honor duties without breaking down, though I did have a good cry in the bathroom after her father's speech about finding someone who loves and trusts you unconditionally. Several guests asked about Mark's absence, and I gave a simple explanation that we were going through a divorce, without getting into the ridiculous details. Interestingly, I met someone at the wedding reception who gave me a new perspective on the entire situation. Sarah's cousin is a family law attorney who specializes in high-conflict divorces, and when she heard my story, she told me she sees cases like mine more often than people might expect. She said social media and smartphones have created new ways for misunderstandings to destroy relationships, and that jealousy-driven divorces are increasingly common. She also mentioned that Mark's extreme reaction and refusal to consider alternative explanations might indicate deeper psychological issues that would have surfaced eventually, even if the Vegas photos had never existed. This was both comforting and sad, suggesting that our marriage might have been doomed anyway, but also that I wasn't crazy for feeling like his reaction was disproportionate to the supposed evidence. My new job has been going exceptionally well, and I've thrown myself into work as a way to rebuild my confidence and establish financial independence. The real estate marketing firm has given me opportunities to work on some major commercial property campaigns, and my boss recently hinted that a promotion might be possible within the next year. It's satisfying to know that I can build a successful career on my own terms, without depending on anyone else's income or approval. I've also been seeing someone new, though I'm taking things very slowly after everything I've been through. His name is Michael, and I met him through a hiking group I joined as part of my effort to build a new social circle. He's a contractor who specializes in home renovation, and he's been incredibly patient and understanding about my trust issues and emotional baggage from the divorce. Michael knows the entire story about Mark in the Vegas photos, and his reaction was completely different from what I'd experienced during the marriage. Instead of suspicion or jealousy, he expressed anger on my behalf that Mark had treated me so poorly over something so innocent. He's helped me see that healthy relationships are built on trust and communication, not paranoia and accusations. We've been dating for about 6 weeks now, and while it's still early, I'm cautiously optimistic about where things might lead. Michael has already proven himself to be the kind of man who assumes the best of me rather than the worst, who asks questions instead of making accusations, and who supports me instead of tearing me down. The contrast with Mark's behavior is stark and healing. Financial recovery has been slower than emotional recovery. The divorce legal fees, combined with the cost of setting up a new apartment and rebuilding my life, depleted most of my savings. I'm currently working with a financial planner to develop a strategy for rebuilding my retirement fund and eventually saving for another house down payment. Goals that feel achievable now that I'm not constantly paying legal bills. The strangest part of this entire experience has been the aftermath with mutual friends and acquaintances. Some people took Mark's side immediately and have essentially ghosted me, which was painful, but probably necessary for moving forward. Others have been supportive throughout the process and have become even closer friends as a result of seeing me through this difficult time. A few friends have privately told me that they always thought Mark was controlling and jealous, but they'd never felt comfortable saying anything during the marriage. These revelations have been eye-opening, making me realize that the warning signs were there all along, but I was too close to the situation to see them clearly. David, the man whose innocent appearance in those photos started this whole mess, sent me a card after hearing through mutual connections that the divorce had been finalized. He again apologized for the trouble his presence had caused and expressed hope that I could now move forward with my life. He also mentioned that he'd started dating Rachel again, which I found surprisingly touching, given how she'd stepped forward to help a complete stranger during my legal battle. Looking back on the last 4 months, I can honestly say that while this has been the most difficult period of my life, it's also been transformative in ways I never expected. I've learned that I'm stronger and more resilient than I ever knew. I've discovered what real friendship looks like when people support you through genuine crisis. And I've gained clarity about what I want and need in a romantic relationship moving forward. The woman who went to that bachelorette party in Vegas was naive about relationships and willing to overlook warning signs in the name of keeping peace. The woman writing this update has learned to trust her instincts, set boundaries, and demand the respect and trust she deserves. In some ways, Those innocent party photos were the catalyst I needed to discover who I really am and what kind of life I want to build for myself. I still feel sad about the end of my marriage and the dreams Mark and I had shared, but I no longer feel guilty or responsible for his reaction to those photos. His inability to trust me, his refusal to listen to reason, and his willingness to destroy our life together over unfounded suspicions were choices he made. I can't control other people's choices, but I can control my response to them, and I'm proud of how I've handled this impossible situation. As I write this final update, I'm sitting in my own apartment, in a space that's entirely mine, planning a future that's full of possibilities instead of limitations. It's not the future I expected 4 months ago, but it's a future I'm genuinely excited about, and that feels like the best possible outcome from such a devastating situation.